You're listening to Overhead Story Channel. Enjoy.
That morning started like any other. I hit snooze once, maybe twice, then stumbled into the kitchen to the familiar whir of the coffee machine warming up. Max, our lab mix, circled around my legs as I scooped his kibble into the bowl. The curtains swayed from the breeze through the open window. The news murmured in the background, and for a moment, everything felt normal, predictable, safe. Emma had already left for her morning run. She did that now, ran before work, said it helped clear her head before the madness of client calls and Zoom meetings. I used to join her on weekends, back when we were still making time for us. Lately, it felt like we were two people renting the same house with different schedules, passing each other like background extras in our own lives. After feeding Max and pouring myself that first cup of coffee, I headed out. Traffic was light, the sun was already high, and my day was supposed to be a routine blur of emails and spreadsheets. Somewhere between the first and second red light, I opened my phone. Out of habit more than interest, I tapped open the newsletter Emma had signed me up for years ago. One of those monthly company updates she said I'd get a kick out of back when we were newly married and still synced each other's calendars and emails like it actually made life easier. It was the same format as always, bland headlines, recycled slogans, some announcement about performance goals. But halfway down the screen, just as I was about to close it, my thumb froze mid-scroll. There was a photo. At a corporate retreat, apparently. Some mountain resort in Montana, the caption said. A weekend of innovation, leadership, and forward-thinking minds. The kind of copy Emma used to write, back when she still showed me her work. She was in the picture, front and center, wearing a floor-length black dress I didn't recognize. Her hair curled in waves, makeup done just enough to look effortless. She was standing next to a man, younger, mid-20s maybe, fit, with the kind of smirk you only wear when you know something no one else does. And then there was the pose. His hand rested low on her back, fingers spread just enough to make the contact obvious. Her arm was looped through his, her body turned toward him, not the camera. Her face was angled so close to his that, for a second, I wondered if it was a still frame from something more in asterisk mate. A second earlier, and their foreheads might have touched. A second later, and maybe her lips would have grazed his cheek. The caption below the photo read, "Our marketing star and her most trusted partner." That was it. No names, no context. Just that. I stared at it for longer than I want to admit. My first instinct was denial. Maybe it was just a flattering sh*t, a weird camera angle. Maybe the guy was gay. Maybe she didn't know he'd touched her like that. But then I looked again. At her smile. At the way her hand rested gently on his wrist. That wasn't a coworker's smile. That was personal. That was comfort. That was chemistry. I saved the photo before I even realized I'd done it, then locked my phone and pulled away from the light as the cars behind me honked. The rest of my day was a blur. I couldn't tell you what meetings I sat in, what emails I sent, or what I ate for lunch. The photo looped in my mind like a broken reel. Every time I thought I'd let it go, I'd remember the way her body angled toward his, how familiar they looked. Not in a boss and intern way, but like people who had already crossed lines and forgotten to step back. That night, after dinner, I brought it up. She was rinsing dishes, hair tied up, still in her work clothes. The TV was on in the background, some show we both used to like but hadn't watched together in months. I said it casually, trying to sound more amused than alarmed. "Hey, I saw the company newsletter today. Didn't know you guys went full black tie in Montana." She paused just for a second before replying. "Oh, that thing." She laughed lightly, but it was too easy. That was just a silly office tradition. They always do a fake gala on the last night. Someone gets dubbed the star of the quarter, and we all play along. It's just for laughs. I watched her carefully. "Who's the guy?" She didn't meet my eyes. "Jason. He's new. Really smart kid. Fresh out of grad school. He's on my team now, handles digital assets and some ad buying. Seems like you two are pretty close." This time she did look at me, and there was a flash of something in her eyes. Not guilt exactly, but calculation. Like she was measuring her response for just the right effect. "Oh my God, are you jealous?" she said, smiling. But it felt like a performance. Come on, it's not like that. You know how those corporate events are. Everyone drinks too much, they take a million photos, people lean in to talk over the music. You're reading into it. Maybe I was. But her response didn't sit right. The words were too smooth, too prepared. I'm not jealous, I lied. Just surprised. You didn't mention it. We barely talked that week, she said, rinsing the last plate. You were slammed with your launch deadlines, remember? I didn't want to bug you with pictures of me playing dress-up. She kissed my cheek on her way out of the kitchen the way she always used to, but it felt mechanical now, like part of a routine. I stood there for a while, drying my hands, listening to the sound of her heels clicking down the hall toward the bedroom. I wanted to believe her. God, I really did. I wanted to laugh at myself, tell myself I was overthinking it, that it was just a stupid photo from a dumb work event. But something had shifted. I felt it like a fault line under my feet. And suddenly, every conversation, every unexplained late night, every time she'd brushed off a question or deflected with humor, they all came rushing back, like pieces of a puzzle I'd never known I was building. I lay awake that night staring at the ceiling while she scrolled her phone beside me in bed, the screen angled slightly away like it always was now. At one point, I heard her chuckle softly at something she read, but she didn't share it. She just kept scrolling. And I kept seeing that photo. The caption mocked me. Our marketing star and her most trusted partner. Who was he, really? And more importantly, who was she now? After the photo, everything started to unravel. Not all at once, and not in some dramatic, crashing way. It was quieter than that. Like a slow leak. Like a low hum in the back of your mind that won't shut off. The kind of thing you learn to live with until one day you realize it's been pulling you under the whole time. I kept telling myself to let it go, that it was just a moment caught at the wrong angle, that Emma would never do something like that. We'd been married 7 years. We'd been through job losses, family deaths, a failed round of IVF. We'd seen each other at our worst and found a way to still hold hands afterward. That had to count for something, right? But the photo didn't fade. And slowly, neither did the things I'd once brushed off, the things that now begged to be re-examined. It started with her calendar. Emma used to sync everything, down to hair appointments and weekly grocery runs. We joked once that if it wasn't in the calendar, it didn't happen. But lately, entire blocks of time were missing. At first I assumed she forgot to log something, no big deal, but then it became a pattern. Hey, weren't you supposed to have that branding summit on Wednesday? I asked one night. She didn't even look up from her wine. Oh, they moved it last minute. We did it virtually instead. But there was no reschedule on the calendar. Nothing in her email. Just an empty Wednesday from 1 to 6 p.m. And a vague excuse. That same week, I noticed her phone habits had changed too. Emma used to leave her phone out on the counter, screen up, never thought twice about it. Now it was always face down. And locked. I'd see her glance at it, then pick it up and carry it with her to the bathroom. Something she never used to do. Once, when I walked into the room unexpectedly, she tilted the screen away so fast it might as well have burned her hand. Who was that? I asked casually. She blinked. Just a Slack notification. Boring agency stuff. Then changed the subject before I could say anything else. There were little things too. Ones I'd forgotten until I started putting it all together. Like her wedding ring. Emma loved that ring. She used to fidget with it when she was nervous, spin it on her finger during client calls, hold it between her teeth when she was thinking. But now, I'd catch her leaving the house without it. Twice in the last month, I'd asked and gotten the same half answer. Oh, I forgot. I took it off for yoga. Except she hadn't been to yoga in weeks. I checked. Then there was the perfume. Not the everyday floral scent she used for work. This one was bolder, darker. The same perfume she wore on our anniversary trip to Charleston. The one we bought after she made me walk into every boutique on King Street just to find the perfect bottle. She'd kept it tucked away after that trip. Said it was too fancy for meetings. But I started smelling it again. Faintly on her coat sleeves, on pillowcases, on scarves tossed across chairs. And every time I caught the scent, It took me right back to that night we sat by the water, clinking glasses and promising we were stronger than whatever came next. Apparently not. I started remembering a moment from a few weeks back, something I dismissed until now. We were sitting side by side on the couch watching a movie, and she got a message. Her phone lit up, and she instinctively hit the power button. I caught a flash of the name, not one I recognized, and a small heart emoji at the end of the preview. "Work stuff?" I asked. She nodded without looking up. "Campaign feedback. I'll deal with it tomorrow." And just like that, the conversation died. But the moment stayed. There were more like it. One night, I came home earlier than planned from a client dinner, only to find the bedroom door shut and her voice hushed behind it. When I opened it, she jumped slightly, quickly clicking off her laptop screen. "Didn't hear you come in," she said, too casually. "Just catching up on emails." The room was dimly lit. She was in pajamas, but her makeup was still on. Lipstick just slightly smudged. Maybe it was nothing, or maybe I'd trained myself not to see it. I started looking closer. Not in a controlling way, not like I was trying to trap her, but like a man slowly checking his own pulse after feeling something off in his chest. I started keeping track. Mental notes at first, then actual ones. Times, details, phrases she repeated. The name Jason came up more frequently, her new hire. She spoke about him with the kind of effortless affection that I hadn't heard directed at me in months. "He's so quick," she said one night. "Picked up the whole analytics tool in a day." Another time, "Jason made this hilarious meme about our Monday stand-ups. I have to show you later." But she never did. Then came the weekend. She said she needed to fly out for a branding workshop in Denver. Last minute. Just her and 2 others. "Super low-key," she assured me, throwing clothes into a suitcase without much thought. "I'll barely have time to breathe, let alone sightsee." Something about it didn't sit right, especially when I offered to drive her to the airport and she declined. "It's out of your way," she said. "Just call me paranoid, but I hate goodbyes at the curb." She smiled, kissed me, and left with a rollaway suitcase and that perfume trailing behind her. I checked the shared calendar that night. Nothing. Not even a flight confirmation. When I texted her around 11 to check in, she sent back a photo of the hotel lobby. Fireplace, modern furniture, people milling around in suits. "Noisy but cute," the message read. Exhausted already. The photo had been taken on portrait mode. Blurry background. One clear figure in focus, Jason, laughing off to the side, drink in hand. She didn't mention him in the caption. I didn't ask. I stared at that photo long after my phone dimmed. Something about the angle suggested it wasn't a quick snap *T. It looked framed, curated, like someone else had taken it and she just happened to be in it. That was the night the noise in my head became impossible to ignore. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, listening to Max breathing at the foot of the bed. The silence felt heavier than usual, thick, like it was trying to tell me something. And somewhere around 2 a.m., I opened my laptop and created a folder. I didn't name it anything dramatic, just notes. Inside, I pasted *TS, timestamps, her itinerary from past emails, the image metadata from the photo she sent. I didn't know what I was looking for exactly, but I knew what I was no longer willing to ignore. Because maybe once you see it, once you know in your gut that something's shifted, you can't go back to pretending. You start asking questions, even if you're not ready for the answers. And you start preparing, quietly, for whatever truth finally finds its way to the surface. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. That quiet, gnawing feeling I tried to suppress had grown into something else. Certainty wrapped in denial. I wasn't just connecting dots that didn't belong. I was tracing a pattern that had always been there, only now it was sharpening into focus. And still, I didn't confront her. Not because I was afraid, at least not in the way most people think. I was afraid of what came next. Of the moment the lie would finally be laid bare and there'd be no walking it back. You can't unknow something once it's spoken aloud. You can't unhear your partner say they gave something that was yours to someone else. I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. The confirmation came through someone unexpected. Derek. We knew him through Emma's work, a freelance photographer contracted now, and then by the firm to shoot #TS, retreats, events. I'd met him once at a holiday party. Friendly guy, quiet, observant, the kind of guy who notices everything without seeming nosy. He messaged me out of nowhere on a Wednesday afternoon. Hey, hope this isn't weird. Can we talk? It's about Emma. My stomach dropped, not because I knew what was coming, but because I already knew what it wouldn't be. Innocent. I called him that evening, pacing the garage while Emma took a bath upstairs. The second he answered, I could hear it in his voice. Nervous, hesitant. I don't want to stir the pot, he said. And it's not my place to interfere. But I was at the Montana event a few weeks ago, doing photos for the company blog. And there was stuff I saw that didn't sit right. I leaned against the workbench, heart pounding. Stuff like what? There was a long pause. I could almost hear him debating whether to keep going. I wasn't going to say anything, he said. But when I saw your name listed on the shared album, the internal release, I figured maybe you'd seen that photo. I did, I said flatly. The one of Emma and Jason. He exhaled. That wasn't the only one. I didn't say anything. I caught them at the bar the first night, Derek went on. Not just chatting. They were close, whispering, laughing. You know when two people are orbiting each other, right? You can just tell. They had that look, like the world had narrowed down to just them. I closed my eyes. You're sure? I'm a photographer, man. I notice things other people miss. And that's not all. His voice lowered. There's footage. Not public stuff, security cameras. I didn't mean to see it, but I was helping the event coordinator edit a highlight reel. We scrubbed through footage from the lobby, some of the lounges. Around midnight, they're seen walking toward the private wing of the resort. Together. Same hallway. 10 minutes later, the camera picks them up again, swiping a keycard into a restricted access suite. He stopped like he was waiting for me to cut him off. I didn't. And they don't come back out, he added. At least not until morning. My mouth had gone dry. I sat down on the concrete step, phone still pressed to my ear. You're sure it was her? Positive, he said. I saw the badge. Emma's name was on it. And when housekeeping went through to prep the room later that week, they found stuff. A cosmetics bag, a cardigan, even a phone charger with a little keychain shaped like a dog paw. Max's keychain. The one Emma kept to remind her of home. The silence that followed felt longer than it probably was. I finally spoke, trying to keep my voice even. Why are you telling me this? Because I've seen this happen before, he said quietly. People protecting the wrong secrets. And because you didn't deserve to be the last one to know. I thanked him. He offered to email me what he had. I told him not yet. I needed time to process. He understood. After the call, I sat in the dark for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even go upstairs to check if she was still in the bath. I just sat there, slowly understanding that everything I'd been afraid to admit was real. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't imagining things. I'd been living in a house built on a fault line, and the quake had already happened. I was just catching up to the aftershock. The next morning, Emma greeted me like everything was fine, kissed me on the cheek, offered to make eggs. She wore her ring that day, a detail that hit differently now. I looked at her, sitting there at the kitchen island, scrolling her phone with one hand, sipping her coffee with the other, and all I could see was the room she'd shared with him, the bed she hadn't mentioned, the lies layered between love yous and see you laters. I didn't say a word. Instead, I made a decision. No confrontation. No teary breakdown. I was going to play this differently. Later that day, I pulled the metadata from the Montana photo she sent me, confirmed the timestamp, the location, the file history. It matched what Derek said. I dug through the company's event recap blog and cross-referenced timestamps with her messages to me that week. Lies. Little ones. But constant. I printed everything. Slipped it into a manila folder. Added the missing calendar entries. Screensh *TS. expense statements she forgot to scrub. It all fit together like a puzzle she didn't think anyone would bother to solve. Then I called my lawyer. We'd worked together years ago when I was going through a tough business sale. He remembered me. I told him I needed help with something more personal. He didn't ask questions, just scheduled an appointment. I started moving through our shared life like a ghost, taking notes, backing up files, listing assets. I documented everything while she slept, while she ran, while she sipped Chardonnay in the backyard with music in her ears. She had no idea, and I think that's what stung the most. Not that she cheated, though that gutted me, but that she thought I'd never notice, that I was so checked out, so harmless, so conveniently predictable, that she didn't need to cover her tracks. Her betrayal wasn't just physical. It was intellectual. She gambled on my oblivion. But I was wide awake now. A few days later, I received an anonymous tip in my email. No name, just a burner address. It included a zipped file, security footage screenshot *TS, images of the guest suite door, timestamp overlays, and one photo that stopped me cold. Emma and Jason, sitting on the edge of a hotel bed, shoes off, laughing at something on a laptop screen. Her legs crossed toward him, his hand on her knee. It wasn't provocative. It was worse. It was mate. That was the moment I stopped waiting for a confession. This wasn't a mistake or a misread connection. This wasn't just work. It was a choice, a series of them, and choices have consequences. There's this misconception people have about breakups, especially the kind fueled by betrayal, that they always come with shouting, fists through drywall, slamming doors. But that's not how it went down for me. There was no scene, no screaming match in the kitchen, no suitcase tossed onto the lawn. What happened instead was quiet, deliberate, surgical. By the time Emma's affair stopped being a theory and became a documented fact, I didn't feel rage. I felt something colder, something sharper, like steel in my chest instead of fire. That clarity is what made the next step so easy. I stopped reacting, and I started planning. First, the lawyer. His name was Eric, and he wasn't the kind of guy who offered tissues or sympathy. Just clean paperwork, airtight strategies, and discretion. Exactly what I needed. I handed over the folder I'd put together: timelines, screenshot *TS, photos, metadata. His eyes didn't widen. He just nodded slowly, flipping through it with the same detachment as a mechanic examining a cracked gasket. She doesn't know you're aware? No, I said. Not yet. Good. That's leverage. We talked about accounts, what was joint, what was solely mine, what could be protected quickly. Turns out, over 90% of our assets had my name on them. The house, the vehicles, the investment accounts. Emma's salary was strong, but not near mine. I'd always paid the bigger bills while she managed groceries, subscriptions, and things like Hulu and Spotify. By the time I left his office, I had a checklist, boring, methodical, bulletproof. I started checking things off that night. First came the accounts. I opened a new checking account under my name only, moved the majority of our joint funds into it, and left just enough in the shared account to avoid raising suspicion. Then I rerouted all direct deposits from my employer into the new account. Next, I began unlinking things. Amazon, Netflix, the cloud storage we shared for years, photos, passwords, our synced calendars. She never noticed. Maybe because she wasn't looking. Or maybe because she thought I still believed in the story we were pretending to live. I called the insurance agent and removed her name as a beneficiary. I revised my will. I secured the title on the car I drove. Anything that had our names together became mine or neutral. Even the emergency contact on my work profile changed, from Emma to my brother. While she was sleeping, I backed up our photo albums and messages. Not because I wanted to save them, but because I needed to remember what real looked like, to remind myself later that there was once a version of us worth mourning. That mattered, somehow. One afternoon, I called a locksmith. We'd had the same front door code since we moved in. I changed it, then changed the deadbolts too, just in case. I bought new linens, boxed up the old ones. Our bedroom, the one where she'd once pressed her head against my chest and whispered how safe she felt, was emptied of emotion. No framed photos, no soft throws, Just blank walls, fresh sheets, and silence. And then came the folder, the beige manila one. I placed it square in the center of the kitchen table. Inside were the divorce documents already signed on my end, the full asset breakdown, evidence of the affair, neatly labeled and chronologically ordered, and a post-it note on top with 3 words. You made this. I moved her things into the guest room. I didn't toss them. I folded them. I made the bed. Her clothes were hung. Her toiletries were placed on the bathroom counter in a neat, clear bin. When she came home that Friday, she didn't notice at first. She kissed my cheek, a habit that now felt like someone else's memory, and walked into the kitchen. She set her purse down, opened the fridge, pulled out a bottle of wine. Then her eyes landed on the folder. She stared at it for a second, then looked at me. What's this? I didn't answer. She flipped it open. First, she looked confused, like she was reading something meant for someone else. But then she started flipping faster, the pages making soft, papery sounds that cut through the quiet. Her mouth opened slightly. She closed the folder again, then opened it once more. She didn't cry. She didn't deny. She just stood there, stunned. I don't, she started, then stopped. I can explain. I'm not asking you to. Her eyes were wide. Where am I supposed to sleep? The guest room. She looked like she wanted to laugh or scream, but all she did was nod slowly. So that's it. No, I said. That's the beginning. She walked down the hallway without another word. I stayed in the kitchen. Let the silence settle. Let the air fill with the truth neither of us had spoken aloud, that we were already over. All I had done was formalize it. That weekend was the quietest of my life. We passed each other like strangers. I'd hear her moving around the guest room, talking softly on the phone, texting. The door stayed shut. She didn't make coffee like she used to, didn't put on music, didn't fill the house with anything that sounded like her. I didn't ask where she was going. I didn't ask who she was messaging. I didn't even flinch when she cried one night behind the locked door. The only sound I cared about was the click of the mailbox when the certified documents were delivered. She signed them 3 days later. I found the folder back on the kitchen table, sealed. Her ring sat beside it. Not neatly placed, not reverent, just there. Like an item left behind at a hotel desk. And still no confrontation, because there was nothing left to win. Nothing left to say that hadn't already been spelled out in receipts, images, and silence. That night, I opened a bottle of scotch I'd been saving. Not for a celebration, but for something final, something heavy. I poured 1 glass, sat outside in the backyard. Max curled up at my feet, the sky heavy with stars. I wasn't healed. I wasn't whole. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't pretending. And that, in its own quiet way, felt like the beginning of peace. Silence has a weight to it, a kind of pressure that builds slowly, like steam behind a sealed door. And when the words finally stop, when there's nothing left to confess, deny, explain, what remains is deafening. Emma moved through the house like a visitor. No more perfume. No more humming to herself in the kitchen. She was present only in motion, never in voice. We didn't fight. We didn't share. We simply coexisted in the absence of everything we once were. She didn't try to argue. Maybe she knew it was pointless. Or maybe she thought this was just another rough patch. One she could charm her way out of the way she always had, with soft apologies and well-timed nostalgia. But this wasn't that. 3 days after she signed the papers, she started sending texts. Short ones at first. Can we talk? I'm sorry. Please don't shut me out. I didn't respond. Then came the calls for the first night, 6 the next. She never left a voicemail until the 3rd day, when her voice cracked and wavered through my phone speaker while I was sitting in traffic. Please, just let me explain. I know I messed up, but this isn't. This isn't how I wanted things to end. Didn't stop her though. Did it? I left the message unheard, then deleted it. By the time the company caught wind of what had happened, I was already 2 steps ahead. See, the silence between us wasn't just personal, it was professional, too. Emma's company had a strict ethics policy in place. Not performative fluff either, real language around supervisor-subordinate relationships, especially during company events or off-site retreats. I didn't report her directly, but someone did. An anonymous submission landed in the company's compliance inbox. Included were time-stamped photos, internal metadata, the security footage Derek had offered but I'd never requested, now clipped and edited into clean, concise moments. No sound, just silence, int asterisk Macy, and professional lines being quietly obliterated by touch and proximity. There was no context needed. There was no misinterpretation possible. Emma was placed on immediate administrative leave. I didn't know until she told me, or rather, I heard her on the phone in the guest room, voice raised in panic, then muffled sobs. Something about internal review and policy breach and legal exposure. When I passed by the door later that night, it was open a crack. Her work laptop sat closed on the bed, a company-issued folder beside it. A post-it note stuck to the top. Temporary access suspended. She didn't mention it to me. Not directly. But that night at dinner, if you could call what we were doing dinner, she sat across the table and said, "Someone sent them the photos." I didn't respond. I don't know who, but it's all out now. Still, I said nothing. She looked at me for a long moment, then laughed bitterly. "It was you, wasn't it?" I finally looked up. "Does it matter?" She didn't answer, just pushed her plate away and left the table. It didn't matter, because the fallout had already beg asterisk n. Her access card was revoked. Her company email was disabled. She was locked out of every system she'd spent the last 5 years building. Team members who once looked to her for leadership stopped returning her texts. I saw it happening in real time, not because she told me, but because I could hear it. The way her phone buzzed less and less. The way she paced the hallway, waiting for calls that never came. And then, one morning, she didn't get out of bed. I heard the alarm go off in the guest room. Once, twice. She didn't move. She stayed curled beneath the comforter, the same one she used to bury herself in during winter weekends, back when sleeping in felt earned, not avoided. I left her there. I didn't feel cruel. I didn't feel satisfied. I felt nothing, which honestly scared me more than anger ever could. A week after the leave notice, she received the email that would finally break whatever thread she was still clinging to. Came late in the afternoon. I only knew because I heard the laptop hit the floor. Not slammed. Dropped. I found her sitting on the floor beside the bed, staring at the screen like it had just delivered a death sentence. The email was short, corporate cold. Effective immediately, your employment with company name is terminated. This decision is final. Your severance eligibility is under review pending further investigation. Do not attempt to access company property or resources. Your badge has been deactivated. She read it over and over, then again, then one more time, even though the words weren't going to change. I didn't say anything. I just watched her, not with pity, but with distance, like observing a storm from behind glass. Close enough to feel the pressure drop, far enough to stay dry. She didn't cry, not right away. Instead, she closed the laptop, slowly, like she thought being gentle might reverse what it had done. Her hands trembled, her breath hitched, and then, out of nowhere, a scream tore from her that shook the walls. It wasn't rage. It wasn't grief. It was the kind of sound a person makes when they realize they've been the architect of their own collapse. I left the house that evening, went for a drive, didn't go anywhere in particular, just followed the quiet roads until the sun dipped below the trees and the world turned that deep shade of blue that only exists for a few minutes at dusk. I ended up at a local nursery of all places, walked through rows of potted plants and shrubs, bought a hedge trimmer and 2 bags of soil. No plan, just instinct. By the time I got home, the house was quiet again. Emma was asleep or pretending to be. Her door was closed. No more movement. No more phones. No more words. I spent the rest of the night in the garden, trimming back overgrown branches, pulling weeds that had crept in while I was too distracted to notice. The soil was soft from recent rain. The air smelled like cut grass and something faintly sweet, lavender maybe. I planted a few new perennials. Nothing fancy, just something to fill the space. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not triumph, peace, a kind I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't the loud, celebratory kind. It was quiet, earned, solitary, came not from justice, but from clarity. And it sounded like nothing. The courtroom felt more like a bank lobby than a battleground. Bright lights, dull walls, and zero warmth. Emma sat across from me in a blazer too stiff to look natural. Her lawyer tried to reframe it all. Communication breakdown, emotional distance, the usual excuses, but the evidence spoke louder. The judge barely asked questions. Photos, metadata, expense records, HR findings. It was all there. A forensic accountant laid it out plainly. I'd contributed the bulk of our assets. The house, the savings, even the car in her name. The judgment was swift. No spousal support, assets mostly awarded to me. Emma didn't say a word. She didn't even look at me. Maybe because there was nothing left to say. Not when the truth had already been read into the record. 2 days later, she got the final blow. A formal email from her company. No ceremony. No appeal. Just, your employment is terminated. Effective immediately. The reason? Reputational risk and confirmed ethics violations. She didn't cry. She didn't scream again. She just sat there, rereading it, as if it might soften the more she looked. Her laptop slid closed with a thud, her breathing sharp. Then came the sound, one guttural scream, short, final. The kind of sound people make when the consequences finally catch up. I was in the garden, trimming hedges. The sun was warm, the air calm. She was unraveling inside, and I, for once, felt absolutely still. Not victorious, not bitter, just done.